to comment with me, George Galloway, here on Press TV every week at this time, bringing you the big conversation, bringing you the great debate. But it could only be a debate if you joined in. That's why, above all, I need your telephone calls on 0044 208 601 4555, or you can SMS the show on 4478 00008066, or you can email me at comment@presstv.co.uk. Well, Israel, which goes around the world openly killing its political opponents. In recent weeks, we've dealt with the murder by nuclear device of the Palestinian president Yasser Arafat, and there have been over the decades too many to mention. The political act of assassination and killing, some would say cold-blooded murder, in which Israel has long been involved, is, of course, a matter of record. Secondly, it is equally a matter of record that Israel has, for the last few years, virtually daily, been threatening to attack the Islamic Republic of Iran, to bomb it, to destroy its legitimate, peaceful nuclear facilities, and presumably everyone living around them. It has obviously been involved in acts of assassination against Iranian academics, professors, scientists, killing them in cold blood in their motor cars or in their residences in Iran and elsewhere. All of this is, frankly, uncontroversial unless you're Ofcom, who exists to defend Israel in these controversies. But if you're not Ofcom, everybody knows that what I've just said is true. The British government deported the head of Mossad at the Israeli embassy in London in protest at Israel's use of British passports stolen from British citizens to carry out the murder of another Palestinian leader in an hotel room in Dubai. So if it's good enough for William Hague, good enough for the British government, it ought to be good enough for most of you watching this. It is a given that Israel engages in the political act of assassination and killing. Yet, within moments of a terrorist attack on tourists in Bulgaria, Netanyahu, the prime minister of what they call Israel, was allowed and given ample space to do so, to openly accuse Iran of this crime without a scintilla, a shred of evidence to back that claim up, but to make a blood-curdling threat that Israel would now take action against Iran. Well, you know my view about that. Any Israeli attack on Iran will be the biggest mistake in history. That I believe, and I continue to believe it. What is remarkable is that Israel is allowed to make these open threats of armed aggression against another state of the United Nations without anyone raising a finger to stop them or even whispering a word against them. Ditto the news which emerged this week that Israel, in defiance of assurances given to the United States and elsewhere earlier in the year, has quietly decided to proceed with public state subsidy for another 500 illegal settlements on Palestinian land. An act of brazen illegality openly endorsed by a state which is using money given to it by another state, namely the United States of America, to fund, to procure illegal acts against the Palestinian people. Virtually nobody says, and absolutely nobody does anything about it, except, mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the fairest of them all? It has to be Abigail Disney, the grand niece of the late and great animator and filmmaker Walt Disney, who, as a member of the family, has inherited vast riches, some of which are invested in companies profiting from Israel's illegal occupation of Palestinian land. In particular, beauty products from the Dead Sea, which I remind you, dear viewer, is brutally, illegally, militarily occupied territory. These beauty products are on sale everywhere in the world, and a very rich profit is being made from this criminal act of occupation. But Abigail, Snow White to the last, isn't having any of it, and has just renounced her share of any profits that come to her family businesses from illegally occupied Palestinian land. So, Miss Disney, I salute you. But when is the rest of the world going to catch up? Why isn't Israeli apartheid quite as unpopular as South African apartheid was? And why aren't people boycotting Israeli apartheid in the way that they happily, in their hundreds of millions, boycotted South African apartheid? That's one of the subjects this evening. Why the double standard where so-called Israel is concerned? We can't avoid the subject of Bahrain, and we can't avoid the subject of the Olympics, especially as we're just a hop, skip and a jump away from the opening of the Olympics, and an alleged torturer and criminal is heading the Bahraini team heading this way. Yes, I refer, of course, to our old friend Princey Nasser, who is the son of the so-called King of Bahrain, chosen, of course, by no one, imposed by British colonialism more than 2 centuries ago. This royal house rules Bahrain like a private bank, and like private bankers everywhere, they are thieves. And when caught out in their thievery, if necessary, they're ready to torture and kill and exile and seek and do anything to stay in power. And one of those things is torturing athletes. And this Princey, big tough guy that he is, actually engaged in torture against prisoners who were athletes, sports personnel, arrested for demanding democracy in their country. This prince came and tortured them in their prison cell, and he's coming here to London. Well, not if I can stop it. I've done everything I can so far to persuade the British government to ban this killer, this torturer, this key central figure in the brutal repression of the democracy protests in Bahrain, to ban him from London. But if he shows up, we're going to make his life a misery. We'll find out where he's living, and we'll make sure he doesn't get a wink of sleep, and that at every turn that he makes, the blood that's dripping from his hands is vividly spotlit for the international audience of the Olympic Games. The Olympics open in just a few days here in London, and believe me, it's going to be very, very difficult to bear. The traffic, the cost, which is at least 7 times the original budget, which we bid for when we were rich. Now we are bankrupt. I wish we could give the Olympic Games back. Not least because East London is bristling with military hardware, weapons, helicopters, fighter jets, surface-to-air missiles, and tens of thousands of military personnel. It is truly extraordinary. Sport, it ain't. Big business, it definitely is. It is a dripping roast for the sponsors and the advertisers and those engaged in commerce. Fair enough, I'm not against commerce, but I am against commerce dressing itself up as sport. It goes without saying that these are my views. They're not the views of Press TV, certainly not the views of any government. Moreover, if you have a different point of view, you're especially welcome to call me, SMS me, or email me. The first caller's on the line now, all the way from Pakistan. Balti wants to talk about Bahrain. Balti, welcome to the show. Go ahead, sir.
Hello, George.
Welcome to the show. Go on.
Hello, George. How are you?
Alhamdulillah, very good. Go ahead, sir.
I want to talk. On Bahrain. You
Yes.
know, the king of Bahrain, the brutal, the dictatorship of Bahrain, who is famous for killing pro-democracy protesters all over the world, has invited the United Kingdom, which is the so-called champion of democracy. And this is, the world should understand what the reality of these countries are. And in Pakistan, in Syria, all over the world, they are interfering. In Pakistan, thousands of innocent people have been killed by these countries. And there is no any force which is talking about human rights violation. And inside Pakistan, these agents of Israel and America are working. And Raymond Davis case was one of the case which is evident, and that all the poor democracy people should understand about it. So I want to say that these are so-called champions of democracy. One must not believe in them.
Well, I'm the last man to fall for that one, Balti. By the way, God willing, I'll be at the Karachi Book Festival in Karachi in February of next year. So those friends watching in Pakistan who are within distance of Karachi, I hope to meet many of you then. Let's go back to the United Kingdom, talk to Wayne about this extraordinary security company, G4S. Turns out that the people who couldn't recruit security guards for the British Olympics are involved in the brutal jailing and repression of Palestinian prisoners on the West Bank. And one of their directors is the former Minister of War, Minister of Home Affairs, Minister of Health, Minister for Scotland, and God knows what else. Dr. John Reid, the former Labour MP, former minister, is a director of G4S, which is involved in prisons in occupied Palestine. It gets murkier and murkier, Wayne, doesn't it?
It does. I wanted to make a statement just to fill in a few gaps, which no one seems to be talking about. The company G4S, which for us oldies used to be Group 4, if you remember,
Indeed.
doesn't make such simple, obvious mistakes. I believe the shortfall of 3,000 to 4,000 personnel was never actually there. It was always going to be filled in by free slave labour job seekers from the Department of Work and Pensions, where people are forced to work for nothing or lose their potential benefit, whatever, £49 a week. Now, due to what happened during the Jubilee, where they did the same thing, and due to the adverse publicity, then it was basically they had to scrap this idea.
And what's your evidence for that triple conspiracy theory, Wayne?
Well, let's put it this way: this is what I believe.
It's a working hypothesis. You believe it without the benefit of evidence. I think, if you'll forgive me, that it's a load of tosh. What we are actually experiencing now is the miserable failure of a private company which thought it would benefit to the tune of 300 million taxpayers' pounds, but proved that private is often less competent, less efficient than public. And the public sector, once again, has had to ride to the rescue of the private sector in the form of the armed forces. And the armed forces are now being used as cheap labour. They're having to forego their leave, forego their holidays, disrupt their family lives, and stand around the streets of East London guarding an Olympic Games which they were never trained to guard and which somebody else in G4S has already been paid to do. That's a much more plausible explanation, Wayne. Trust me on that. Let's go to Raouz in the United Kingdom about Israel and double standards. Raouz, welcome to the show.
Yes, good evening, George Galloway.
Good evening.
Thank you for your good work. But double standard is a good word because that's exactly what's going on in the world today. An attack in Bulgaria, the guy that actually done it, he's been caught and named as a Bulgarian that's done the attack. And still the mainstream media is going on about Iran and how Israel is accusing Iran. If, for instance, in the backyard something happens, do they just, whatever happens around the world is going to be blamed on Iran today?
Yeah.
And have you heard about the conspiracy that's going on all over the internet about the Olympics, which they're going to do a false flag and blame it on somebody and start a whole scenario of wars?
I don't think they need to do that. They've got enough false flags in their locker already.
Yeah, but they're planning it. I mean, it's all over the internet. All you got to do is put it in YouTube and you can watch it.
Well, I know, Rose, but there's all sorts of things all over the internet. Because they're all over the internet doesn't make them true, my friend. I really caution you against this. There is no evidence whatsoever that a false flag operation is going to be mounted at the London Olympics. That is needlessly alarmist. It helps the state securocratic tendency. It means more soldiers on the streets. It means more securitization of what should be a sporting occasion. And I caution you against it. If they wanted to make an attack on Iran, they've already planted enough reasons for doing so. Now, I can't vouch for the fact that they've caught a Bulgarian for this crime of killing these Israeli tourists and wounding dozens of others. The last report I saw said that he'd blown himself up and was a suicide bomber. But if you're right, and they have caught someone, and he is a Bulgarian, presuming he doesn't later turn out to claim that Iran put him up to it, then that will have shot that fox dead on the spot. And I obviously hope that that is the case, because I don't want to see a war between what they call Israel and the Islamic Republic of Iran. I don't want to see it, because I know that it will mean war throughout the world. It will mean that the rivers and the seas will be foaming with much blood, like the Romans saw in the Tiber. Raouz, thanks for the call. Let's go to Shazad in the United Kingdom about Palestine. Shazad, welcome.
Yeah, hi, assalamu alaikum, George.
Alaikum salam, go on.
Right, George, I'm going to keep this short and sweet because I'm running low on battery. Right, this business about Israel, etc., I think Israel gets too much airtime. Nobody wants to fight wars, everybody wants peace. But for what it's worth, one of the umbilical cords of Israel is riba, otherwise known as interest. And the Muslims have a lot to blame for this, because the majority of Muslims are involved in riba, whether they buy multiple houses or whether they're doing multiple contracts. And I think what we want to see in Palestine and Gaza is free trade, and we want to see this free trade started, as the Muslim Brotherhood have said, with an Islamic finance industry, and that's about it.
Okay, thanks for that, Shazad. Let's go now to the comment wall and read your emails. We want your SMS, we want your emails. We try to get as many of them up there on the screen as we can. Let's see whose point of view and from where we're about to read. Garn from Brighton in the UK. I've been planning to come up to London for the Olympics, but I'm a bit scared now. 17,000 troops circulating on the streets, missiles on rooftops, Israeli prison-style security. Who's going to do the welcome speech? Stalin? Honestly, though, how can our government keep getting it wrong? Well, I did make the point last week, and I make it again. If you looked like a Muslim, would you walk in to East London tomorrow? Or even more so once the games have begun? And if you did, do you think your chances of winning a gold medal at the Olympics would be greater or lesser than your chances of being stopped and searched by these tens of thousands of security personnel now there? I'm only asking. Let's talk to Jamal in the USA. Jamal, welcome to the show.
Hello, George. Thank you for having me.
Welcome.
I just want to Thanks. I just want to talk about this double standard with apartheid Israel and just I think a lot of this has to do with a lot of people, at least in America, just don't know what's going on, and I think that there are people going out. There's a concerted effort to stop people from knowing what's going on, and even people who do know are afraid of speaking out about it. And I've actually talked to politicians here who will say, about Palestine, and will say, I agree with what you're saying, or your point of view about how the Palestinians are victims, but I really can't say anything because I'll be out of a job. But anyway, we're having. I belong to a local BDS group, a boycott and divestment sanctions group in Sonoma County in California, and we're actually started an action against Veolia. It's an international multinational company.
Very good, yeah. They're operating in London, by the way, in East London, where the Olympic Games are.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, they run a bus line here, and we're trying to get a local, the Human Rights Commission, the government-sponsored Human Rights Commission, to recommend that their contract not be renewed. And we're running into the same thing that everybody thinks that Israelis are victims, and when you bring up, it's one of the things that's interesting is this thing about whether the bus lines that Veolia operates in the settlement segregated or not. And it's like, well, if no one's actively telling them, let me show me your ID card, or you're the wrong skin color, you can't get on. But if you can't get on, they're not stopping you from getting on the bus. But if you can't get into the station, or even get within 5 miles from that station, even though your house is there, that's where you used to live and you were kicked out. It's a strange sort of psychology that people are used to seeing segregation in one form, and they won't recognize it in another form. So
brilliantly put, Jamal. And I am asking the question this evening: where is the worldwide boycott campaign? And where is the attempt in the United States by the 2 billion Muslims in the world, as opposed to 10, 12, 15 million Jews and tens of millions of Christian Zionists? We're going to be talking about that right after the news. Don't go away.